Coming to you live from my closet. It's Rob. It's Rob Has a Podcast, and now here's the guy who believes in the power of friendship, Jordan Parhar. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Rob Has a Podcast. My name is Jordan Parhar, not Rob Sesternino, filling in for him tonight because he's away at the Podcast Movement Conference in Chicago. But don't worry, we're still here to talk about some BB18. Should be a lot of fun. I'll be filling in for Rob tonight and tomorrow on the recap show. So getting a little bit of a different flavor behind the mic hosting, but I think it'll still be a lot of fun. So thank you very much for joining us. As always on Wednesday nights for our BB18 recaps, I'm joined by my good buddy, Alex Kidwell. Alex, how are you doing?
Doing good, Jordan. Not rocking any bling tonight, but still a fun guy. Hey.
I was really hoping. I mean, I don't really have a lot of jewelry. Like I have this watch, Alex, but I don't really have anything beyond that. So as soon as Paulie did that 2 Chainz reference, I was like, oh man, I need to get some chains. Like how great would that be for the opening line if I had the 2 Chainz thing going on? But I don't. So then I was hoping you would. And it turns out neither of us do. I don't know. Do you think Brent would have some 2 Chainz?
Oh, I've got some chains that are, an embarrassing. They're around here somewhere. An embarrassing throwback to my high school years, Jordan. But no, I decided not to dredge those up in the interest of, my image or, whatever that may be. I don't know.
Oh man, that's too bad, Alex. I'm really disappointed, man. I just said I believed in the power of friendship, and now I don't know what our friendship is. The fact that you didn't do this, but that's okay. On the happy hour next week, I expect the chains. Okay, so bring them next week. Wear them on the show. It'll be lots of fun. Let's set things up for everybody tuning in tonight. So we are live on a Google Hangout here. We got the chat room going on robisawebsite.com. It is just Alex and I recapping this episode. So we're going to need your guys' help tonight if we want this show to go on for a while. So send us your questions. If you got them, leave a comment on the YouTube video if you haven't done so already, or you can tweet me. I'm at Jordan Parhar. Use hashtag RHAP, and we will get into your questions throughout the show. We're going to start off by talking about the episode, and then we'll get into the live feeds. I don't know how much about the episode we'll talk about because the live feeds have been very chaotic lately. So this should be a lot of fun. One other thing, Rob is he's at the Podcast Movement Conference, but this weekend it's RapCon for everybody in the Chicago area. You can go meet Rob and Alex, Brent, Taryn, lots of different hosts from the RHAP universe. So I don't know if there are any tickets left, but there are going to be some events happening in the Chicago area. So if you haven't heard about that yet, definitely check that out. Rapcon.com for that. Okay, Alex, let's jump right into this episode. Victor has been backdoored. He has been placed on the block. Paulie decides to remove Paul. Paul is so grateful and happy that the power of friendship came through for him. And Victor, I mean, I think he said that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but he's been saying on the feeds that he kind of saw it coming, but clearly based on the edits tonight, I think Victor was a little bit bamboozled tonight.
Yeah, he's been naive throughout this whole process. We talked about it a little bit Monday with our, live feed update that he, even after, getting put on the block to a strong degree, he's still not entirely aware. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a case of somebody who's just like a pretty straightforward, honest guy who's like wanting to take people at their word, and like everyone, he can't find one person who's shooting him straight. You know what I mean? So like he has no truth to compare any of these lies to. It's just getting fed lies from every direction. So yeah, I mean, you almost feel a little bit bad for the guy. At least I do, because I mean, he really it's like, somebody who's just in such a deep hole. They can't possibly dig themselves out. Every time they think they're getting a little footing, they just slip and fall further. Yeah, poor guy, I feel for him.
Yeah, I felt for him too. I think that just seeing that Paul scene where they're playing pool and Paul just like, he's trying to tell him, but Victor, he just doesn't get it. And it's just too bad. I mean, nice enough guy, but not really built for this game. What do you think about, I mean, I've seen some people say online, This talk about the roadkill winner, maybe they should not be able to be put on the block because they're making some nominations. I mean, so because Victor was in a really good spot. He wins, or maybe not a really good spot, but so far his week was going well by winning that roadkill. Do you think that maybe Big Brother should have done something to prevent the roadkill winner from going on the block, or do you think that's too powerful? What do you think about that, Alex?
I think more so than too powerful, the real issue there is how do you grant safety and maintain the anonymity? I just don't know how you would reconcile those things. By definition, if the winner is going to be anonymous, then you can't know who it is. And, if they're going to be safe, then you kind of have to know who you can't nominate if you're HOH. So there's really no way to reconcile those two things. The whole power of the roadkill is in the secrecy of it. And the secrecy can only exist as a result of, creating a situation where you're safe, reveals, it has to reveal it. So I think that's the problem there.
Yeah, I think they kind of handcuffed themselves with this. That's why, I mean, because I feel like this kind of sucks for Victor, right? I mean, he had this power. He's won. If Tiffany would have just looked over at Paulie's thing or someone else or Bronte's, then maybe she one-ups them during the veto comp, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, it's just unfortunate. I don't know. I'm not a fan of this roadkill twist, and because of this is going on, it's finding the right happy medium. I think is important with this, and I don't think they've quite reached that with this twist. But luckily for us, I don't think it'll be around to stay for very long. Let's talk about Tiffany here. I think that's a big point of discussion from this episode. We saw at the end of the Sunday night show that Tiffany got put up by Victor. And she was very emotional about it. She was channeling her inner Vanessa Russo in terms of her emotions. And hey, nothing wrong with that. Being on the block isn't easy. I know what it's like. I've been emotional being on the block too. But at the same time, the paranoia, I mean, just so huge with Tiffany there. Alex, when you were watching the feeds at this time, when this was happening, did we get an accurate representation on the show of what actually went down when that was going down live?
As far as kind of giving you insight into why Tiffany sort of became a bit of a pariah in the house recently, I felt like they did a decent job of going back. They flashed back a bit, showed some of the initial kind of confrontations she's had with Frank. They didn't show what led to that, which is that Tiffany has this very aggressive style of communication. I mean, she acknowledges it, but I think it took her, having confrontations with people a few times to kind of, recognize it herself and acknowledge that maybe it's something she needs to back away from, because she does have this manner of questioning people in a way that feels kind of like interrogation. And yeah, it's not good. It puts people on edge. So yeah, Frank certainly is like one of the few people that'll tell you that like something you're doing is bothering him. So I think that's where the issues really came, is that Tiffany was doing something, her style was off-putting to people, and Frank is the person who's going to tell you like, hey, you're putting me off with this. So yeah, but then on top of that, right, like this, her paranoia and kind of, I think as much as Da'Vonne wants to say she left last season behind her, you can't not think about Vanessa when you're seeing these things. Like, of course she's gonna have, feelings about, like, Vanessa's the person who really kind of ripped apart Da'Vonne's early season alliance and like inserted herself in there and evicted Da'Vonne. So you can't really blame Da'Vonne for not feeling the way she does, or for feeling the way she does about Tiffany, because it's deja vu for her.
What did you think about how Tiffany handled this situation? I know we talked about this on the Happy Hour on Monday. There was some debate as to whether Tiffany had actually thrown the competition or not during the what was that called? It was called, I wrote it down.
The Tozarks. Yeah.
Yes, the Tozarks.
Boy, howdy.
I actually kind of like that name. But we were talking about that, and Brent was saying he was so mad, and he was like, if we watch the show and Tiffany threw that, I am gonna be so mad. But it turns out Tiffany was not throwing it. I think that was a good move by Tiffany. I don't think, you can't, I mean, this early in the game, you never know. I mean, it is a debate, but I think when you are in trouble and you've got a shot to win it, she clearly had a shot at winning it. She was 1 point away from pulling that thing off. I think you got to take that shot, especially with all these vets and because of the Vanessa thing. What do you think about that, Alex? Did Tiffany make the right move by not throwing this POV?
I disagree, Jordan. How about that?
All right, there we go.
Surprise.
No, that's good though. I mean, it's an interesting debate. I mean, we saw this on Twitter. I don't know if people were paying attention to Twitter. It was on the weekend. Vanessa Russo were debating over this. So I'm curious, why do you think then that Tiffany should have thrown it?
I think it's very situational. I think, you talk about early in the game. I actually think this is a safer time than later to be doing something like this because of the number of votes it'll take to flip something against you. The sheer number of people they would have to flip, to turn this completely on Tiffany this week. The house dynamics just don't support it. It's going to be very difficult. She'd really have to do some overtime work to incite that, I think. It's not an ideal situation. You never want to be in a position where you have to do this. Unfortunately, she put herself in that position by making a majority alliance with the bulk of the House, by being, having the outburst that led to Victor targeting her over anyone else, thinking that she would be a good target for the House, by then, subjecting herself to multiple people she's aligned with telling her to throw the comp. That's the thing. Once you have your whole alliance saying you have to do this, that's why you have to do it. It's not so much about, to me, it's yes, is there a little bit of a risk you go home now? Yes, maybe 2-3%. But what she did is the worst of both worlds. She lost and she has everyone knowing that she tried. So right now, nobody fully trusts her because she's pretending that she threw it when everyone could see she's not. I mean, twinkling, come on. Like, if you're throwing it, do what Howard did in BB18 and do sails or sailing or whatever it is. I mean, something really basic, The fact she used the 3-point K, you know what I mean? There's just too much there to indicate that she's not throwing. To me, like, call me crazy. I think didn't Dan even throw a veto once? Was he when he was on the block? I know he's thrown vetoes. He said.
Yeah, Dan, actually, this really, I mean, technically, if we're saying this is week 2,
that's when he did it, right?
That is when Dan did it. And that's when, certain people watch the show and say, oh, Dan threw the veto. I can do the same thing and it'll work just great. And spoiler alert, doesn't always work so great when you try. It's
all relative, right? See, it's all about the image you have and what image you need to create. Dan was in hot water week 2. His only real buddy had gone home. And he recognized that he was the pawn. He was able to really sniff out and be sure that he was the pawn. If you know you're not the target and you can throw it, it makes you look weaker. You know what I mean? Dan, he says in the diary room in that moment, I got to throw it. My whole games at this point is predicated on the idea that I'm a weak player. I've got to maintain that at all costs. He knew that there was a small risk going home right then. But if you want to win the game, you need to set up that narrative for the long term. And that's what Tiffany failed to do. She cashed in all her chips at once, and she didn't leave herself with too many going forward, unless other things happen, which I'm sure we could talk about on the feeds.
We will certainly talk about that when we get there. The thing for me with Tiffany is that, like you said, she's stuck in the middle. If I was Tiffany, I would go for it, screw it, go for it, try to win, save your butt, win that POV. And then when you save yourself, figure it out after, be honest and tell people. If this happens, which is, like you said, the worst case scenario, then what you have to do is you got to be honest. You got to tell everyone, hey, look, I'm sorry. I tried to win the veto. I wanted to save myself. I'm really sorry. I screwed up. I looked out for myself before the alliance. It won't happen again. I just am really nervous and paranoid, and I just wasn't feeling comfortable. Instead, what we saw in the episode, at least I don't know if this is what has actually happened, and Alex, you can tell us in a sec, but we saw Tiffany say, well, now I can just say that I tried to throw it. Yeah, no, Tiffany, that is not going to work. And Davon and Frank were already on to her in the episode. Alex, since then, has Tiffany come out and come clean saying that she, in fact, was trying to win that POV?
No, but I mean, we could get into it more on the feeds. Luckily, some other stuff has occurred, and the heat isn't necessarily as much on the veto comp. You know what I mean? Like, that's the beauty of the Big Brother house, is that a day or two here and there and focus has changed. But, it certainly doesn't do her any favors to try to maintain a false narrative when you already have people suspicious of you that you're hoping to gain trust with. So, it's not just people, outside of her alliance. If you need Davon and you need Nicole and Michelle and these people to stand by you, you got to be real with them, especially at this point in the game, especially if you're thinking about working with them for weeks and weeks to come.
Yeah, it's a tough situation either way, but we'll talk about it when we get to the live feed section of the show. I'm just looking at else here. What else we want to talk about from the episode? Let's talk about the Fatal Five. I mean, that's the other thing that we saw. In regards to the whole Tiffany alliance. Nicole mentioned in the diary room, maybe we have to be the Fatal Four. Michelle and Zakia seem to be on board. So now, I mean, it seems like, Alex, that Tiffany, I mean, if she's out of the Fatal Five here, and she's already, clearly Frank is not on her side. Paulie seemed to be getting a little bit annoyed with her based on his DR earlier in the episode. Where does Tiffany go from here?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we can, again, talk about kind of what she's done on feeds more so than I think on right now, but yeah, she's put herself in a tough spot coming out of this episode, right? I mean, there's definitely not a lot of equity in the move she pulled in Veto. You know what I mean? And the fact that Davon even talks about how she really felt like Tiffany was trying to beat her specifically. Like, there's just a lot here to take away that's just, bad for Tiffany. And it is crazy that, she was nowhere on the radar. I mean, everyone's telling her how safe she is when Victor puts her up, and no one was lying. But through her own actions, through her own paranoia, through her own distrust of people, and her inability to keep that to herself, I mean, that's really what's led to these DRs from Davon, from Frank, thinking about, like, if she, why don't we just take the shot now? And that's the other problem, is like that there are still technically two sides, but the one side has all the cards, and the other side is just, a totally sinking ship. I mean, it might as well not even be a side. So because of that, even though it's only week 2, people are already starting to look at turning inward on the 8-pack simply because of the complete lack of threats on the other side. Everyone else is just so clueless and just so far behind in terms of, strategic information of what's been going on, that I wouldn't be stunned if more of them last to, like, the jury phase, simply because they're looked at as, like, we could get rid of these people whenever we want.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's so I love the early game of Big Brother. There's so many different directions we can go into. Okay, Alex, I'm just thinking here. I'm looking at my notes. There's nothing really else I'm dying to get into. I mean, we saw Taryn mentioned on the Sunday episode that there is a James prank every single episode so far this season. We got that tonight with
that's true.
Yes, with the hashtag Captain. But other than that, I mean, is there anything else from the episode that you really want to get into? Because I really want to get into the live feeds, because there's a ton of stuff that has gone down the past 48 hours.
Yeah, a lot of craziness going on. Yeah, I mean, Paulie spelling sustainability, I thought that was pretty good. Good on Danny Zuko. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
Worthy of note.
Worthy of note. I mean, if that wasn't, if it was how long the word is, Paulie would have destroyed everyone with that one. But he had a couple of those, I guess, with 0 points. But
yeah,
what did you think about that? Did you like the idea of the Big Brother taking the Scrabble format with this and giving point values per for each letter, or do you like the traditional format where Russell Kairouz can win with shotgun in BB18?
Shotgun Russell, the love muscle. Yeah, no, this is, I kind of like this. This is more, I think, in keeping with, like, yeah, you make the letters that are harder to use worth more points. And then I think now the strategy needs to become search out the high point letters first. Search out your vowels, search out your Z's or whatever else you think you might be able to use. I know, like, Q is pretty tough. But yeah, I mean, try to maximize those if you can. And study, if you're going to go into the Big Brother house, study, your words with X's and Z's and stuff. I think that's the way to go from here on out.
I've gotten someone in the chat saying maybe they did this last year too.
Yeah.
Did they do this last year? Okay, so
yeah,
my mistake there. Last year, I was just so out of it from Big Brother Canada 3 that I was like, yeah, I just didn't even know what the hell was going on.
Yeah, no worries. And it wasn't always this, like, it's taken a turn for the gross over the last few years, where it's like they used to search different stuff, and now, like, I think 2 years ago they searched through like acne ridden, they were searching through like whiteheads, and then last year it was what, it wasn't toe fungus. It was, it was noses, right? Weren't they digging through noses?
Yeah, that was one.
This. So yeah, it's just Big Brother has decided to make this like the gross comp now going forward. It's like spelling and foul smells is what this is all about.
For whatever reason, I guess they go together. Okay, well, you know what? I'm sorry to those of you who are spoiler free, but there is a lot of stuff we have to get into that's been going down in the live feeds the last 48 hours. We had some people calling for an emergency happy hour, which I'm sorry we weren't able to pull off, but hopefully we'll have plenty of time to talk about spoilers tonight. So if you do not want to know about the spoilers before tomorrow's episode, now is the time that we will bid you farewell. But you know what? Just stick around. Seriously. I mean, you saw who won the veto. The important stuff has happened. You're going to see this stuff tomorrow anyway. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe not all of it, but it's really good. So trust me, if you can, stick around. With that, cue the spoiler song, which I do not have. Yes, I do not have because I'm not Rob. I don't have a mixer. So this part of the podcast will be, and the audio version is where the song will go in. So we're giving you your warning now, and let's jump into it. Okay, Alex. Live feeds have been crazy. I don't even know where to begin.
Me either.
This is awesome. So, you know, I think the thing that would be the easiest for people to understand and to be able to just comprehend things would be if you went through things chronologically starting from yesterday, because that's kind of when things really started to blow up, at least from my perspective. So Alex, let's start with how did this mess begin? Like what was the initiating incident that started the chaotic wheeling and dealing that was happening yesterday and apparently is now jumped into today?
Yeah. Well, groundwork was already laid, and we had talked about it some on Monday about how the 8-pack is you're starting to see some cracks. You're starting to see some people not trust each other. A bit of, Davon doesn't trust Tiffany. Frank doesn't trust Tiffany. Davon doesn't trust Frank. Everyone recognizes that Frank is trying to bring in Bridget as some kind of goat for long term. Anytime someone mentions, like who of the, former Jose 4 is going to be left standing, Frank brings up Bridget. It's really obvious what he's trying to do. Frank just, again, doing a lot of things without consulting his alliance, like talking to people, suggesting boot orders, and this is the way it needs to be, starting to rub people the wrong way in terms of the level of forcefulness. While a conversation was going on about this downstairs between like the fatal 5 girls, or really, I believe it was the fatal 4 at that time. It's so hard to remember. This has been a whirlwind. While they were talking about Frank and how he's doing too much and how he might need to go sooner rather than later downstairs, Frank took the opportunity to tell Paulie upstairs about the 8-pack. So Paulie, who was not in on the 8-pack, was informed with Frank informs him, doesn't consult anybody about doing it beforehand, just takes it upon himself to do it.
Okay.
And so this is a big catalyst for why people have really now began to, turn on Frank more so.
So what was Frank's reasoning? Was there any reasoning for Frank telling Paulie, or it was just like that Frank wanted to try to rope him in? Because that's basically it. Okay.
So if you want to give Frank the benefit of the doubt, right? I mean, which, it's kind of hard to do, but if you want to like understand what Frank is thinking, right? Which is what we're trying to do here, understand where everyone's coming from. I believe that he thinks he's doing what everyone wants him to do to a degree. Like he's just being the guy to voice what everyone's thinking. I mean, we saw it, like Davon certainly got this ball rolling by telling Frank, like in the storage room there, we saw it in the episode. Davon has had multiple conversations with Frank where she has certainly stoked this flame. You know what I mean? Like she has contributed to this anti-Tiffany sentiment that Frank is spearheading now. The idea that we need to get Tiffany out next week, which, as much as you can say we can bring in Paulie and replace, and Davon, actually, if you remember from the episode, Davon is the first to suggest that in the storage room. We don't even need Tiffany. We can just use Paulie. So I think to some degree, Frank thinks he's just actualizing Davon's vision. The problem is you just can't do these things without talking to people, regardless of whether or not you think it's what they would want you to do. Obviously, that's giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt. The other side is like he's just trying to look out for himself. He is, trying to, like, he's got a little thing with Corey and Paulie, a little 3. And I think he's worried that wants to make sure that he beats anyone to the punch about revealing this information. So the more likely scenario, and the one that if you're not a big Frank fan, you would probably take, is that Frank's trying to just cover his own ass, and it got exposed when Paulie actually Frank was the one who came clean and told people, like, I told Paulie about the 8-pack, but it's the way he went about it, not great.
Okay, so what was Paulie's reaction to finding out that, hey, Paulie, so just so you know, like, we're best friends, but there's kind of been this whole bomb squad like alliance that you haven't been in for a week and a half, and just so you know, like, is that cool with you? Like, how did that go? Because I feel like it's a very awkward conversation if you're Frank.
Yeah, no, and and Frank tried to play it off, but right, there's really no, once the information is what it is, there's no way to take it well. Paulie handled it about as well as you could expect, but it's interesting. You hear him talk about it later, and he says stuff like, "Yeah, I don't even care." But I have noticed, like, it has made me see things like differently. Like now I notice like Nicole stopped talking about whatever she was talking about when I came in the room. So like he definitely does care. He definitely has noticed, like, this has affected him to some degree. And like, and he's not like holding grudges or anything about it. Certainly he's like glad that he's now on the inside of the loop. But you'd have to be crazy not to be a little bothered by the idea that this was made. And not only were you not in it, you were the guy who was on the block the first week. So that's pretty scary if you're Paulie.
So when Frank told the other, the other members of the 8-pack about this, how did they react to Frank's face, and how did they react behind Frank's back?
Yeah, I mean, not pleased. Obviously, he tells Davon and Zakia and Nicole, and he tells James, and for the most part, they're just like, okay, and they just kind of, wait for him to kind of say what he has to say before later kind of gathering in rooms and talking about, oh, this idiot, or this, this guy, he's playing for himself. He's not worried about the group. He's not taking care of the team. The interesting thing is that, in like the last, or really today, it has been, Davon is kind of so anti-Frank and has really been continuing the anti-Frank narrative to a point that you're actually seeing some conversations about whether or not it's Davon who needs to go soon and not Frank, simply because like Frank has told people that information that allegedly had come from Bridget about how Tiff was targeting Frank did in fact come from Davon, that was a lie that originated from Davon, and everyone is finding that out now. And Nicole is still, I think, on board to get rid of Frank. But if I'm Nicole, and I think Nicole is, because she's playing a pretty smart game and she's really well positioned, you have to be a little worried about the idea that Davon can turn the tides against Frank so quickly with a lie. It would make you wonder, can Davon do this to me? Would she? You know what I mean? And I think that's where Nicole's head's at right now. So it'll be interesting to see, because, the real strength of this 8-pack was in the 4 vets being on the same page. And in many ways, they're on 4 separate pages right now. Davon, had talked about, there's a lot of ideas going around in the last 2 days about a final 5 deal that includes basically the 2 kind of showmances, Paulie and Zakia, and Nicole and Corey with Davon. And that's great. Say yes to that. They're offering you a final 5. Instead, Davon has kind of spread that around and said, but I don't want that. That's 2 couples and me. Like, she's telling James, we need to do something to avoid that. You know what I mean? So it's just too much in week 2. I love Davon. She does great DRs. I hope she stays forever. But like, this is just, it's simply too much. Like, other people are burying themselves. You don't need to pile on. You can just let them do what they're doing,
Right. I mean, I love Mama Day so much, but just stuff like this, it's just like, what are you doing? It's just worried about final 5. Davon, it's week 3. Who cares who you get to final 5 with at this point? Like, half those people will probably be gone, including you at that point. Why are you freaking out about that? And you know what? Being in a final 5 with 2 showmances, that's not so bad. Is that so bad? Because you're in the middle. You're smack dab in the middle of both of them. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world, but regardless, that's just, it's just so frustrating. Okay, so...
yeah, it is. It's crazy. Like, we never would have guessed coming into the season, like, that simply by doing nothing, James would be arguably the best veteran, because right. Nicole is kind of, back in a showmance, and that's putting a bit of a target on her. Frank is doing way too much, and, alphaing around the house and also farting, which like, it's like it's hard to say like control your body, you know what I mean? But it really is bothering people. Like he's clearing rooms left and right, and like that is at a point where it's like, dude, just go to the bathroom and like figure out your situation and then come back. You know what I mean? Because that's a problem. Like when people are actively talking about it when you leave, like it actually is kind of bad. Old man Frank, man. So yeah, you've got Davon scheming, Frank aggressively farting, and Nicole showdancing. James by just hiding in trash cans looks like a strategic mastermind right now.
Oh man, Captain Camo, that's crazy. Yeah, the farting and going to the bathroom thing, I think that is a really good strategy. My French teacher told me that when I was in I think it was grade 4 or grade 5, and my life has just been so much better ever since.
Hey, you never know how you're going to benefit by just going to the bathroom in the Big Brother house. It worked for your boy Kevin.
Right? It worked for Kevin really well. So, I mean, you never know. Going to the bathroom, never a bad thing. Okay, so let's just based on what I had seen, the last that I had seen last night, and I was working all day. I raced home, watched the episode, and came into this. So I haven't really had too much time to look at, or really any time at all, to look at what's been going on the feeds today. So you kind of mentioned where Nicole's head is at as of right now. Has there been any more, fallout from what was going down yesterday? Have there been more events today? Is Frank catching on to this? What exactly is going on now?
Yeah, really, the bulk of today is spent, people having conversations about Frank and about how Frank is, Frank's name is going to come up soon, like maybe as soon as next week. People are already talking about plans, I mean, Davon is illustrating an elaborate plan to the Fatal Five, about how they need to like get Corey to win HOH, and then they can get Frank up with the roadkill. I mean, very elaborate stuff, like. That's too much. Again, what you need to do is just hang on to these thoughts until you see who wins HOH and then move from there, because like, and it's interesting, Paulie and Tiffany are having a conversation today, and Paulie said, like, I didn't realize how much this game really is like chess, but you really can only act so many moves ahead. And he's absolutely right. Like the more weeks down the line you start to write checks for, the harder and harder it is going to be to actually cash them things when it comes time, because once any bit of information starts to leak, even if you just tell it to like your number one ally, you just don't know. I mean, once you put something out there, it's out there, and now it can come back to you. And this is one giant game of information. So that, sooner or later that stuff does happen. Like with the idea that Davon told Frank that Tiffany is coming after him, which wasn't true at the time. Like now that's made Nicole question Davon, which wasn't a thing before. And Nicole was, and still maybe totally on board to get out Frank next. I mean, she has only had these conversations with Paulie and Corey, so maybe she's just stringing along those guys. You know what I mean? At the same time, Davon could have gotten away from this blameless. You know what I mean? There's really no reason to be in this position. But yeah, it's really about Frank today. Everyone's kind of talking about how many deals he seems to have made. And that's the problem. It's like once people start talking about you, a lot of stuff comes out in the wash about how, Frank, you have Frank made a Final Four with us. Oh, he made a Final Four with you. Frank made a Final Four with me. Do you think he has Final Twos with everybody? You know what I mean? And like that just kind of ruins your clout in the game. Like your word carries a lot less meaning now. And really the only person who I think is like taking Frank's words at like 100% face value now is his goat Bridget, who like is still just, she's trying, but it's just so funny how bad she is, because she's like, her only strategy, as I mentioned on Monday, is just trying to bake for people. And even people are onto that now. People have called out Bridget's baking as a strategy. Like, how bad do you have to be where your only game is baking and people are even onto that? Like, that's rough, man.
Oh man, poor Bridget. Okay, so for Frank then, so it seems like only, like you said, Bridget is the only person who is really taking his words at face value. Is Frank catching on to this? Like, does he have any idea that these other house guests are talking about getting him out like ASAP? Because we were talking on Monday, you, Brent Taryn, and I, and you guys were saying that he didn't think that the girls were forming anything. So Is he still thinking like that?
Yeah, no clue. I think, yeah, he's been very dismissive of the idea that the girls would form something without him. I think he really thinks the vets are locked in. Like, it makes no sense for the vets to ever turn on each other. So maybe he's operating with an assumption that's false, and it's like emboldened him to do things that he shouldn't be doing. But yeah, I mean, he thinks he has a solid 3 with Corey and Paulie, and that may still be pretty solid. But Corey and Paulie have privately talked about, like, it's us two, ride or die to the end, actually, right, buddy? And let's just take everything I still trust Frank, but let's take everything he says with a grain of salt, you know? The thing that was interesting this afternoon/evening, yeah, I guess night for me, but it's kind of still afternoon for them on the West Coast. You had James almost doing. It was kind of reminiscent to me of like the Paul Victor conversation where Paul wants to give when they're playing pool. It's like Paul wanted to give him information, but he knew that in doing so, he would like expose himself. It's like James was kind of telling Frank stuff like, man, I really think like the 8 is starting to form like inner groups. Like he's like, I'm really worried about us turning on each other and stuff. And he's just like, just in as many words telling Frank like, dude, keep your ears open and your eyes open and just watch out, man. So like I think this is, you know, where it's all going to be a bit of a mess in the next week or so. Is like you've got a lot of just different information going around the house because people have had all these different conversations in such a short amount of time, and they just, you know, taking what someone else has said and running around with it. And now it's been a crazy game of telephone that's just moving too fast to be accurate right now. Like Davon thinks James would be willing to throw HOH and win and put up Frank, or win roadkill and put up Frank. And like, you know, but now you have James, like, you know, throwing Frank a bone here. Like there just seems to be a lot of, I think we could get this person to take out Frank next week, but does anyone actually really want to be the person that does it? Remains to be seen. Like, I think it'll be interesting to see A, who wins HOH, B, how hard people try to persuade them to go after Frank, and see if it's actually something that anyone wants that much blood on their hands this early in the game, because Frank is a massive target.
I feel like just based on what I've read and what I've seen, Tiffany would have the guts to take a shot at Frank. Is that correct, Alex?
Oh, she would totally do it. I mean, yeah, you know, like I said, Day has really stoked that flame, and it involves, you know, poisoning Frank against Tiffany and poisoning Tiffany against Frank. And there was already, you know, it wasn't that hard to do because they already didn't get along so good. So yeah, Tiffany would be happy to do that. The problem is, like, yeah, I mean, that you would have to get Nicole and Corey's team to win HOH, and you would have to get Nicole and Corey in on this fix to some degree. Because Corey would know that giving Tiffany HOH would, you know, be bad for Frank. Maybe would end up with him on the block. You know, there's a lot of mistrust across the board here, where it's like, I can't envision everyone being down with throwing it to Tiffany. Tiffany would almost have to win it outright. Frank definitely wants his team to win it. He's talking about like, we should win it and, you know, give it to, like, he's fine with giving it to like Bridget or, you know, Michelle or something. He's you know, hoping for, or having James win or something. But it's really a situation where like a bunch of people are hoping for other people to throw it, and they're hoping for other people to throw it. And it doesn't seem like it's just going to be a bit of a mess, I think, coming up, because this whole thing is just exploding inwardly, like, as we speak.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Alex, but I cannot wait for tomorrow night. It is going to be, oh man, it's going to be hectic. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. Let's jump into some of your questions, guys. If you want to get those in, you can leave a comment on the YouTube video, or you can tweet us using hashtag RHAP. This first one comes in from Timothy Kyle Tucker. Timothy says, with Day, Nicole, and Frank all playing recklessly, I don't know about Nicole playing recklessly, but Alex, maybe you can talk about that. Do you think it is possible that this season will have a Final Four with no vets left? So first part, is Nicole playing recklessly? Just because what I've been, you know, seeing and reading, I don't think she is, right?
No, she's in a good spot. I may have like alluded to that when I lumped her in. I kind of like made a you know, a half sarcastic joke about James playing the best by doing nothing. Really, the only thing about Nicole is how close she is with Corey, that everyone sees that's like, even if they're not kissing, they might as well be, because everyone sees them as a showmance. And it has led to Davon saying things like, I don't want to be in a Final Five with the showmance. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit, like, if you want to, you know, pick apart there, sure, you can make a bit of a meal out of a morsel. But no, I think Nicole's doing a lot of things really well. And I think she actually, probably more than anyone, can dictate who goes home next week if she wants to throw her weight around and make that call, because Davon has done a lot of dictating, Frank has done a lot of dictating, and people are on to that now. So instead, you're seeing more conversations in closed rooms with Nicole about just the general goings on. And I think Nicole is kind of seen now as more of a like kind of someone who's also just going along with aggressive players. So if she wanted to take more of a leadership role among the non-vets, I think she could pull that off.
So then the second part of that then is, do we think that the Final Four could possibly end up having 0 vets there?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally possible. I mean, there's not a lot has to go down. They're already turning on each other. You know what I mean? And it's really early in the game. So, I think more likely is that one of them's there, that, whoever kind of, emerges out of the 4 of them as like a clear winner will make the Final Four. I think, it's probably more likely to be, Davon, James, or Nicole than it is Frank, simply because even if you're Frank's ally, you got to want to get him out, or at least start thinking about getting him out before then, given his propensity for competitions. But yeah, no, I think Nicole or James have good chances still at making the 4. I think the other 2 Frank needs to stop doing so much, and so does Davon to a degree.
Yeah, Davon is not making the Final Four. I could call my shot right now, and I don't think that's a very bold one at that. I honestly, it's hard. I think that one of them will be there just because James can pull out a competition win if he needs to, and right now he's just doing nothing, which is great for his game. And yeah, same with Nicole. She's got Corey as that meat shield there as well. So I think one of them will make it. I won't be shocked though, like you said. Otherwise, okay, let's go.
Also, I was going to say, I think Nicole really benefits from just the notion that like you've got Bronte in there who's like, really kind of up the creek without a paddle. She doesn't really have anyone to turn to too much. One thing I did want to mention, like Tiffany has tried to bring in the Spy Girl some. We talked about that some, and that's really what you asked where she's gone and when she seems to have nowhere to go. That's who she's tried to confide in more and bring in to a degree. And yeah, it's interesting with Bronte. Her strategy right now seems to be like, let's try to get rid of a guy, and then maybe it'll just be so obvious that the 8 girls need to work together that they won't be able to ignore it. Like that's her prayer right now, is that like she is really tethered to the idea of just like, my only shot is with girls. So, we'll see. I mean, maybe Bronte is someone that, Nicole can use going forward, or even Davon, to try to actualize something they want to get done.
Speaking of Bronte, we got one here from Nate Hall. Nate says, going into week 3, is there still some hope left for Bronte to survive, especially with all of the Tiffany Frank Cold War potentially turning hot? So yeah, we're assuming Victor is going to go home tomorrow. That hasn't changed, right, Alex?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think, we were asked on Monday, what can Victor do? And I think to me, it really just speaks to how it completely dead in the water Victor was, that all this can go down with Tiffany as a bit of a focal point, and it's still going to be a unanimous sweep tomorrow, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's really, really clear that, yeah, I mean, there was not much he could have done, because other people have really actively tried to hang themselves, and they still can't, beat him to the noose.
So then what are Bronte's chances of surviving next week then? Because it seems like, Frank is, at the top of a lot of people's hit lists. It seems like Tiffany's at the top of Frank's. But Bronte, I mean, on paper, before all this happened, Bronte would have been target numero uno, correct?
Yeah. They're still talking about the possibility of going after Bronte next week. Simply, I think, for the idea that everyone is scared about the idea of like breaking suit. You know what I mean? If you turn on the 8, that sets the precedent that now it's time to turn on the 8. And before you know it, the final 5 includes Bronte and Paul and Natalie. You know what I mean? Like, so nobody wants that. They want to make sure they've sufficiently like decimated that side before making the move inward. And I think that's where a lot of people are torn right now, between we don't want Frank telling us what to do, we're terrified of Tiffany's paranoia, we're worried about Davon's scheming, but can we really address any of these things now? It's so early that, and that's why it's ridiculous, all the conversations that are taking place, because nobody can really act on any of this information they think they have. So, yeah, I mean, Bronte's, helping herself simply by just time is what's benefiting her. Just hang on until this massive group just feels like there's no targets left but each other and turns inward. And before you know it, I mean, that's just going to be blood for blood. And you could just sit on the outside and just kind of like watch it trickle down the drain as you make jury. So that's the spot she needs to find herself in. And she could very well, depending on who wins HOH this next week, it's possible that they're going to stick with the plan and go Bronte, but it's probably equally possible at this point that someone wants to shake it up.
Crossing my fingers. Let's everyone pray to the BB gods tonight before we go to sleep. We're getting that shake up because then this season will definitely kick into high gear. Okay, this one is from Blake Benji. Blake says, considering superfans have done well in the recent past, at this point in the game, could you tell me which players are considered this season's quote-unquote superfans and which are clearly recruits? Thanks.
Michelle.
So that's it. So Michelle is the only super fan in the house.
It depends on how you define super fan. If you're talking about someone who watches feeds, yeah, I don't think that any of the new players have really checked out feeds except Michelle, who clearly watches live feeds and is a big fan of the show.
Okay, so then who is clearly a recruit that doesn't know anything about the game? I mean, we saw tonight Paul was pretending that he didn't know the rules of the POV when he actually did. Great job by Paul tonight. And that's something I think we brushed over a little bit in the recap of the episode. Paul's looking great. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Paul lately. What do you think about Paul so far, Alex?
Right. Yeah. Oh, and Zakiya. Right. Zakiya has been watching for a long time. I don't know if she's ever dabbled with feeds, but she has been watching the show forever. Paul, I think, is an example of somebody who, like, if this was a season full of new players and full of recruits, like, Paul could be a good player this season, potentially. I don't know that he necessarily is as good at persuading people or, winning friends and allies as he thinks he is, but he's learning quickly and he recognizes the right things to do better than almost anyone in this house, including some of the people who've played before. Like, there are people making the same mistakes that got them evicted in previous seasons. And you've got Paul learning after 1 week immediately, okay, this is what I need to do. And it seems like common sense to some degree, but it's really not, because the instinct is to do what Victor did and like be mad and be bothered by the fact that they got you. You know what I mean? And Bronte, to just be scared and feel like it's got to be like, we saw the whole show tonight focused on the idea that Victor is going to get blindsided. But every Bronte DR focused on how Bronte thinks she's the target, because she's just so consumed with the idea that I'm on the block. I voted for Paulie last week. Surely, like, I'm the one. Like, that whole, the rug was pulled out from under them, and now they're shaken. They're disturbed. You know what I mean? And they don't really know, if they could be operating with that much bad information for that long, now they can't really trust anything they think they know. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, it F's with your head pretty bad when you think about like the psychology of it. So as a result, yeah, you've got like a lot of these people who really are just, still just so far behind in terms of the strategic game. And Paul is being given tidbits of information because he did the right stuff, because he just laid down and just agreed to everything and accepted the premise of his position in the game and, blindsides his own buddy and agrees to whatever the HOH wants. And those are the things you got to do if you want to survive. He's right. We can't all make it. The clock is ticking for one of us and he doesn't want to let it be him. Good for him. That's how he should play.
All right, this next question comes from Mr. Epic. Mr. Epic says, is it just me or have these vets barely learned anything from their past mistakes in their previous seasons? Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched upon this a little bit, right? I mean, I guess Nicole has, but I don't. I mean, James is kind of doing the exact same thing. I mean, I guess it's working for now, but Devon and Frank, it doesn't seem like they have learned anything, right?
Well, I think they all really are to some degree. And I think it really speaks to how hard it is for human beings to change what's a natural behavior. Like, you can't just say, I'm going to change this and then change it. Like, Frankie Grande talking, and I hate that I'm bringing him up, but I actually really like that he talked about how he worked with like a life coach specifically for Big Brother. He prepared, he tried to like learn how to control his temper. He tried to like do things that would better who he was for the game. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that is the correct approach. Like, if you really want to actualize change, it takes like, active, like you have to like go to, some kind of life coach or a therapist, or like actively engage in like daily behavior patterns that like reframe your mind and remind you of like what you're trying to change about your behavior. And like that's a lot of work. Like nobody really wants to put in that kind of work. So you tend to see people after enough time. And again, that's the key. You know, it's easy for 1 week to be a model citizen, but after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, after 4 weeks, you're going to see people revert to who they really are. And that's Nicole getting bored and finding a guy. That's James getting bored and finding a trash can to hide in. That's Frank getting bored and becoming a cocky dude. And that's Davon getting bored and getting, you know, throwing some shade around a little bit. You know, that's who these people are. That's why they were chosen. That's what makes them good TV in a lot of ways. But it also speaks to just how hard it is to come into the game playing something different, no matter how much you might want to.
All right, let's take another one. This one's from Zach Kennedy. Zach says, why are these people only wanting Victor out? Why not just have less stress and take out Bronte? Is it simply the boredom making them overplay? So would it be less stressful if they took out Bronte instead of Victor? Because I feel like, I don't know, do you really want to keep Victor around now that you've actually taken this shot?
Right, yeah, I mean, I guess the only upside is if you wanted to somehow turn it against Paulie, because we know that Victor would hold Paulie responsible for the situation. You know, he doesn't necessarily know how deeply the fix is in. He thinks this is Paulie's move, you know, more so than it is everyone's move, which it really kind of is. I think the reason you're not going to see this is because that ultimately Bronte is, you know, pro girl. And even if not everyone realizes to what extent they can work with her, like that's got to be in the back of their heads right now. I think, you know, even if it hasn't turned into an outright battle of the sexes, the idea that there's a numerical advantage for the girls is in the back of some people's minds. And whether or not they want to exploit that now, you know, maybe not. But, you know, when you're talking about like, who do we get rid of? And your choice is Victor or Bronte, and you don't care much either way. You know, I think most people in the 8-pack should want to keep the person who they think they have a shot at maybe working with down the road if they need the number to pick up. And most people in the 8-pack are female. So I think the inclination should be Bronte, especially with Victor really kind of being a bro's bro. He really hasn't done a lot to make connections with other women in the house besides, I guess, like his initial showmance with Natalie and how he's, you know, somewhat maintained a relationship with those girls. Like he certainly hasn't, you know, established a relationship with the Davons or the Nicoles. Well, a little Nicole. He's tried to flirt with her, but you know,
is his way of flirting I can't get that little package we got on the show a couple nights ago where Natalie was saying she doesn't like how Victor talks to her, and what he was saying is just like, oh my God, like how did he have a showmance with Natalie that first week? Like, I wish so badly we have feeds for so many other reasons, but just for that, like, just mind blowing there.
And for Natalie's sake, I'm glad for, you know, that Victor's going to leave, because Natalie just, she's just at her wits. Like, she just can't talk about anything else over the last couple of days. Like, she's just so tired. Like, every little thing Victor does now bothers her. It's almost like how Victor was with her, where he's like pointing out all the little things. Now that's Natalie with Victor. Like, now that she knows his number's up, and like, it's easy to like badmouth him to everyone else because everyone knows what the story is. Natalie's just on this whole anti-Victor train, which is funny. It's almost like the just irrational levels of Michelle hating Bridget, which has gotten very extreme.
Okay, let's take this one here from Karen M. Karen says, what can Tiffany do to regain trust in the house? I mean, I don't know if there's really anything she can do, Alex, other than, like you said earlier about Bronte, kind of just waiting it out and letting all this other let pandemonium happen around her. Is there anything else that I'm missing? I mean, she's talking to the spy girls. Are the spy girls accepting her, or are they kind of just iffy on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing, is they were kind of drowning, right? And she throws them a life preserver. So they're very receptive to anyone who's willing to like seem like they're interested right now. And Tiffany was willing to do that. Unfortunately, that was part of a little bit of what got her in hot water with her alliance, is they saw that she was trying to do that. The good news is that last night, I mean, like you said, time and not doing anything while other people have their moments and hang themselves. You know what I mean? Because it's a roller coaster. You have your ups and downs. And if you can stay level for long enough, other people are going to become the new, you know, talking point in the house. Whatever's just happened is going to be the conversation. And luckily for Tiffany, I mean, Frank did enough. And Frank, you know, really, mostly Frank telling Paulie about the 8-pack was the catalyst that made Davon say, all right, enough is enough. And like, go and squash her issues with Tiffany. Tiffany. I mean, she really felt like, I mean, and to her credit, she's absolutely right. You can't be like targeting both of them, you know? I mean, she's got to pick one for now, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, she's brought back in Tiffany. The Fatal Five had a meeting, and it was the five of them, and they really kind of like hashed out that like Tiffany says like, look, I just get paranoid, and I just need you guys to just kind of like, but I'm not my sister, and I want you to know that, and saying all the things, the right things, because Devon kind of like coached her like, I need you to not be Vanessa right now, and I need you to make it clear to everyone that you're not gonna, you know, maybe she could have worded it a little better, but Tiffany understood and received the message in a receptive way, and yeah, it does seem like the Fatal Five girls are on point right now. The only thing, like I said, is like Devon is really gung ho about getting out Frank. So is Zakiya. So is Tiffany. How much so are Nicole and Michelle willing to stick their necks out for that agenda? They're both very risk averse players that neither one is going to be inclined to nominate them if they win HOH. I can tell you that right now. They're both kind of more inclined to wait a few weeks before, you know, busting up the what they've got going right now, trying to, you know, ruin a good thing. And yeah, I mean, I get where they're coming from because they can work with Frank.
Yeah, as Colin Stone says, hashtag always be throwing, Alex, especially at this point of the game if you are Nicole or Michelle. Let's take this one from Goob1155. Goob says, what do you think Frank's best move is? This is a tough one. I mean, is there anything Frank can do at this point? I mean, he's just dug himself into this hole so early by just having this, air about him in the game. And it's unfortunate because Frank is so entertaining to watch in the show. I love to watch Frank on the edited version of the show. And whenever I have had the chance this season to watch feeds, Frank is a guy I always tune into. But I really think his days are numbered at this point. And secretly, I kind of hope he goes home next week or the week after, because then we'll get to see him in the battle back. So, Alex, what do you think? Is there any rabbit Frank can pull out of his hat? Is there a dance funeral within Frank that he can use?
Sure. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be that intricate, I don't think. He just has to get wind of the idea that the girls are plotting against him, specifically Devon. If he can really understand that what Devon told him about Tiffany coming after him was a lie, then he can maybe go squash it with Tiffany and, you know, blow up Devon. This is a bit of a game of hot potato, right? And like it started with Tiffany, and she was able to kind of like pass this like social, like, you know, the social pariah card on to Frank. And now Frank is the topic of conversation. But there is a path here for it to be Devon, because Devon was so involved in stirring up this controversy in the first place that you can kind of make her the culprit of this if you have the right conversation with the right people. He's benefiting already without even being aware, simply because Corey has been brought in by Nicole on this plan of targeting Frank, and Corey is probably a bit more pro-Frank than he is Devon. So Corey is like Corey and Paulie, maybe to a degree, are trying to convince Nicole that Frank maybe doesn't necessarily need to go right away. Let's just watch him. You know what I mean? So that stuff is happening without Frank having any idea that this is going on behind him. If Frank were to find out that these conversations are happening and he could trace it back to Devon and Zakiya, like, I think there's a very real way for this to blow back on them and him to find himself in a more powerful position than he was before, which is interesting. I mean, it just kind of remains to be seen, again, who wins HOH. And, you know, if it's Frank, people are going to be coming to him with stories to try to save themselves personally. So that'll be interesting to see. If it's Devon, I think, you know, she's at the point now where you may as well just take the shot at Frank, because as we talk about on these shows, like, if you're going to let the information get out there that you're targeting someone, you may as well just take the shot now, because it's going to get back. And, you know, when you don't have power is when you don't want people finding that stuff out.
Has Frank talked about winning HOH?
You know, I don't think he wants it for himself so much. I think he thinks he doesn't need it. I think he's trying to find a way for his team to win it, but maybe without him winning it. I think he'd be fine with, you know, James winning it, but I think, again, he's just really not suspect of Devon. And yeah, I mean, that's really the key here, is that Devon is the one. Devon and Zakiya are the ones who really want to get Frank out. I mean, Zakiya is really pissed that Frank told Paulie about the 8-pack, because like she's in like kind of a showmance with the guy and she's been lying to him. You know what I mean? So like, if you're Zakiya, you totally get why she's like had it with Frank. You know what I mean? But it's just a question of like, could they go after him so rabidly that they lose sight of their own games in the process and end up doing more harm than good to their own personal games.
All right, let's take this one from Dylan Deming. Dylan says, looks like Jordan is rocking some makeup. Color Pop from Zakia. Does it look like I'm wearing makeup, Alex? I'm not wearing makeup. I mean, it is kind of, as Frank said in that episode in the HOH room, it is very hot in my closet right now. So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, you got good lighting there under the staircase, Jordan. In your little Harry Potter room.
Yes, exactly. The cupboard under the stairs.
Yeah, 9 privy to drive.
Was that your British accent, Alex? That was I don't know what accent that was. That sounded like
I think it was just like I think that's just like what the narrator of the audiobook sounded like to me.
You listened to the audiobook of Harry Potter? You didn't actually read it?
I think I did both at some point.
Oh wow, look at you. Working overtime. Okay. Learning new things about Alex Kidwell every day. Okay. Miss Kadion says, who would you say is in the best place right now? And who would you say is in the worst place? Okay, so Alex, first part, who's in the best place in the house right now? I mean, has to be one of these people that we're not even really talking about, right?
Yeah, probably. I'd say like, I would argue Nicole, because even though she's it is good to not be mentioned, but also good is to be the person that everyone wants to talk to. And that's what Nicole is right now. She's like, yes, she's in on all the conversations, but she's not like the catalyst of any of them. You know what I mean? She's not the one talking. She's there to listen, and everyone wants her there to listen. And that's like the Andy spot. That's where you want to be. You know what I mean? You want everyone to think that you're their person to confide in. And so then you have all the information. And I think Nicole has the most information in the house. And, she could, which puts her in the best position to do something if she decided she wanted to. I think Michelle's in a really great spot as well, simply by getting herself in the majority within the majority and then basically kind of going to sleep. I mean, really all she's focused on right now is her dislike of Bridget. And it's actually good because people just think it's irrational and silly. So people are just kind of almost like, oh, Michelle, she's just so, it's funny how much she wants to get Bridget out. You know what I mean? And people just kind of dismiss her a bit. And she's going to be here a long time at this rate. The only person talking about any dangers, like Frank recognizes her as the one super fan. And Frank, having played with Ian, knows the danger of keeping someone like that around to the end game because of the mental comps that'll crop up around 5 or 4. So Frank doesn't want to let Michelle get to the end. But, he doesn't want to target her now. He's certainly got too many other people to think about. So Michelle's in a great spot. People in bad positions, obviously Victor. He's going out tomorrow night. He's going to need to win the Battle of the Box. So that's a bad spot. Frank. Frank is not in a good spot depending on who wins. Bronte still not in a great spot. I think Paul is actually safe for now. I don't think anyone would necessarily be targeting Paul next week, which is good. He's done a lot this week to really help out his cause and, remove himself from the very bottom of the totem pole. You know what I mean? As long as you're not target 1 or target 2, you can work with it. You know what I mean? So he's done just enough, I think, to try to hang in there until we get to a mid-game phase where, the deck of cards gets shuffled once again. And then I think, besides Victor and Bronte, obviously Bridget is not only totally clueless, but people are already a little tired of her and the idea that she's just too transparent. She wants information because she has none, but you can't just you come off as really desperate when you're just hanging on every little morsel anyone else says. And then they find out that you talk to other people and what you say gets back around. She's just playing very sloppily, and it's not, the only saving grace she's got is that she's playing so sloppy that nobody takes it seriously. And so nobody's actually concerned about what she has to say because no one's giving her anything to use, really.
Sloppily, I like it. Is sloppily a word, or does that just sound like
totally a word?
Is that a word? Because in my head it just sounds so weird. Okay, we're going with it. Sloppily. Okay, so there we go. Okay. Jumping over to Twitter quickly, got a question from Edward Morris at Coral Fanatic. Edmo says, when do you think the roadkill ends, and when jury starts, or when the teams end? Yeah, so what do you think about this roadkill? For me, I'm thinking when the battle back ends. Alex, where are you at on that?
Yeah, I could see that. I would hope that the teams end soon, because I really think the teams, more so than even the roadkill, is really kind of just this isn't Big Brother. You know what I mean? It's a different dynamic, and I'm not crazy about it. And it also makes it very hard to track, like, he thinks he's going to throw, but she's going to throw, and who's not going to throw, and who's on what team. And it's unnecessary. It's redundant. And it's not really contributing anything to the strategic, the week to week of the game. Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think or sometime around the battle back. I mean, them scheduling that like they did and when they did strikes me as kind of like, almost the jury phase, like almost this is the point where, we begin the next stage of the game. They do tend to kind of mark that. Reminds me a bit of BB13 where that happened with the kind of the Brendan Lewan superpowers point of the game. It was right about there, and then they did something similar. So yeah, what was that? You had like Keith's Angels, Cassie, Lewan, Brendan. So you had like, it was 4, right? Or 5?
Yeah, I haven't.
You had 4 in a popularity vote, and then the winner competed against Lewan.
Yes.
So yeah, I think like after 4 weeks, I would say is probably a fair time to expect that, and that would be right about there. So yeah.
Okay, one from Jordan Chong at Jordan T. Chong on Twitter. He said, "Did Victor underestimate that Calafiore charm and social game?"
Yeah, it's all about the social game. It's the Calafiore charm.
See,
that's what it's all about.
I can't do it, so I needed to make sure we got that. On BB18, we got the James quota that needs to be filled with the pranks. On RHAP this season, the Calafiore charm that quota's got to be filled every episode. And there's no Rob, so
yeah, well, you're not hanging out with enough people from Jersey, Jordan. What can I tell you?
No, I'm not. So hopefully someone tomorrow can do it too, Alex, because you're not going to be there, and I can't do it. So that should be interesting. Okay, last one.
I'm sure Ian's got it covered.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Ian is all about that Paul Calafiore. He's all about that. He's got all the impressions on lock. Okay, let's take one more. This one, and I lost it. Oh my! Here we go. No, there's so many questions, guys. Thank you very much for sending those in.
Yes.
This one is much love to you guys. The power of friendship, guys.
I'm
so great.
You beat me to it. It really is.
Really is.
Powerful thing. You don't underestimate it. It's like that heart ring from Captain Planet, man. That was actually secretly the most powerful one. People don't know, man.
Wow, I did not. The heart ring really was the most powerful. Well, again, yeah, learning so much. Okay, the BB president, he's got the last word on tonight. At the BB president, he says, who do you think has benefited most from the fallout of the past 48 hours? Interesting question, Alex. I have no idea. You would know this best. What do you think?
Who's benefited most? I'd have to say Tiffany. I mean, for the sheer element that she was out. I mean, they had made it the Fatal 4, like we saw in the episode. I think maybe we should make it the Fatal 4. They were having meetings and not including her. That was happening. This Frank situation has caused Devon to recognize the need to work with the devil I know. Like, I don't know about this Frank guy, but I've played with Vanessa. So maybe I could deal with Tiffany for a little while longer. And so, yeah, that's really helped Tiffany. Now she's included in the Fatal 5 meetings again. It's kind of messed up to kick her out anyway, considering she came up with the name Fatal 5. It is a bit of like the Caleb, like you're not in your own bomb squad type of thing, which is, these are these like, in unintentionally hysterical moments of Big Brother that I kind of live for. But yeah, no, I mean, she's right back in the mix now. People are trusting her with information that they were worried she would freak out with a couple days ago, simply because like they want the fix to be in on Frank and they want to get everyone on board now. And so she's like back in the loop now, whereas she was out, not 2 days ago.
I feel the sympathy too for Tiffany and for Beast Mode Cowboy. As someone who unintentionally got kicked out of my own alliance that I named. Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun.
Cool, man. It's not cool.
No,
it's make a new name, you jerks. Why are you gonna? It's like Puff Daddy. You're gonna like take my stuff, and then I'm not gonna even get any royalties for this. Like, this is ridiculous.
Okay. Oh man, so much fun.
Oh, we're just sampling it. Whatever.
Alex, anything you want to add before we get out of here tonight?
No, I think at this point, yeah, the takeaway is, the too long don't read version. It's chaos in the house. Nobody can act on this chaos until someone new wins head of household tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm excited to watch feeds tomorrow night, and yeah, look for our Friday update, during the day as well, because that should end up being, if things play out accordingly, there could be a lot going down Thursday night.
Yeah. Oh, are you going to be so Alex, you're traveling to Chicago because you're going to be going to RapCon this weekend. So are you going to do that podcast in Chicago? How's that going to work?
Oh, that's a good point. Right. So we're doing a panel on Saturday. So maybe we won't do the Friday thing, but maybe, I don't know, maybe me and Taryn and Brent will try to do like a Snapchat live feed update or something. Maybe we'll try to figure something out.
What's your Snapchat if people want to follow you, Alex?
Oh man, you put me on this. I think I'm A Kidwell 87.
A Kidwell 87. So there you go. If you want to follow Alex on Snapchat, get those live feed updates in your Snapchat feed. Check Alex's story out. If you want to follow me on Snapchat, you can too. JPAR21. Terrible Snapchat name. I need to change it, but I don't think that's possible. So I don't know how I'm going to do it. Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight on this episode of Rob Has a Podcast. Lots of fun chatting about everything on the feeds and the episode with Alex. We alluded to it earlier. We will be back tomorrow night live after the episode. Myself, Brett Walgamont, and Ian Terry after the eviction and after hopefully the results of the HOH competition. So it should be really exciting getting into all of that. So hopefully we can see all of you guys there. And I really cannot wait to get into it. If you enjoyed this episode of Rob Has a Podcast, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Get more. Go to robhasawebsite.com/iTunes. Never miss an episode while you're there. Alex, we need a hashtag for tonight's episode. Does anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat room. I see people talking sloppily. I thought that was good.
I like that. Sloppily was good.
You didn't know if it was a word. That's fun.
Yeah, so let's go hashtag sloppily. I think that's a fun one. A lot of people are saying hashtag Jordan Has a Podcast.
If you want,
if you want to go hashtag Jordan Has a Podcast, feel free. You can shorten it to hashtag JHAP.
Also talked about Old Man Frank. I saw someone mention. I like that one as well.
Old Man Frank. We could do that. Farting in the bathroom. Lots of potential things. You know, it's a choose your own hashtag night on RHAP. You can pick whatever you want.
Yeah, JHAP is short, so you can go with that, and you can also do Old Man Frank or sloppily if you like one of those.
Yeah, I pick one of those. We're cool with it. Tweet us though, regardless of which hashtag you choose, and let us know if you made it all the way to the end of this, what you thought of this episode of our RHAP. I am at Jordan Parhar on Twitter. Alex is at Alex Kidwell. And you know, if you want to, last year when I filled in for Rob, when I had, I think it was Taryn. It was Taryn and I and Spencer Clausen. End we did hashtag hire Jordan or hashtag fire Jordan. If you want to do that, you can tweet Rob as well. And if you want me fired, hashtag fire Jordan, feel free. Got a lot of those last summer. It was very funny.
Why do you do these things to yourself, Jordan? Why do you put yourself in these positions?
Oh, it's fun.
It's just your Big Brother game all over again. Yeah, you just can't help but shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I really do like it a lot. It's fun. It's amusing for me. And we're just doing a podcast about reality TV. So if people want to fire me, you know what? It's totally cool. I don't mind. Okay, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. Alex, have a great time in Chicago. Woo! And have a great time. We were talking in the pre-show. Alex is really excited to get into Pokemon Go. So, Alex,
check that out tonight.
Yeah, so have fun with the Pokemon Go. You're gonna have to let me know how that goes. And
I have to walk around my neighborhood and see what's available.
Well, maybe there's gonna be different Pokemon available in you're in Silver Springs, Maryland. That's where you're at.
Yeah. Maybe I go to Chicago and there's something else out that way.
Find something new while you're out there. While you're in Chi-Town. So you'll have to keep us posted on Twitter and your Snapchat about that. Okay, guys, we will see you tomorrow night live after the episode with myself, Ian Terry, and Brett Walgamont. Thank you so much for joining us. For Alex Kidwell, I'm Jordan Parhar. Hashtag sloppily. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Peace out.